Afternoon. I will call to order May 18th meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Thank you, Director Nelson. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Director Julian,
Here.
Director Cordova,
Here.
Director Infante. Oh, thank you. Director Patino, Director Williams,
Here.
Director Hartman,
Here.
Director Nelson,
Here.
Director Lavanino,
Here.
Director King, Director Clark, Director Perotti,
Here.
Director Rouse,
Here.
and Chair Capps.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, at this time, please stand and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, the first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2023 meeting. Is there any discussion? If not, I need a motion.
So moved.
We got a second by Director Rouse. All in favor?
Chair Capps.
Oh,
we
sorry.
do need to conduct.
Roll call is required. Thank you,
you.
clerk.
Director Julian,
Aye.
Director Cordova,
Aye.
Director Orona, Director Williams, Director Hartman, Director Nelson,
Aye.
Director Lavanino,
Aye.
Director King, Director Perotti,
Aye.
Director Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. The next item is the approval of the administrative items. Does any board member wish to pull any of these items? Anyone? Seeing none? Can I please get a motion and a second for the administrative agenda?
So moved, Julian.
Second, Williams.
Thank you. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Director Julian,
Aye.
Director Cordova,
Aye.
Director Orona,
Aye.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Director Hartman, Director Nelson,
Aye.
Director Lavanino,
Aye.
Director King,
Aye.
Director Perotti,
Aye.
Director Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. We will act on the balance of the agenda first. Do we have any public comment on the balance of the agenda, administrative agenda?
Director
Oh,
or
sorry.
Chair Capps,
Excuse me about that. We already did that, didn't we?
we're on to Director's report.
Thank you. I will, thanks for bearing with me here, for stepping in as vice chair. Okay, director's report, please.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I have 3 items I'd like to mention. First off, it's spring, and we've been back in business with community events. We started on April 22nd. We were sponsors of the Guadalupe Earth Day event, and Liz Bantalon, our PIO, was able to actually get out there in the community and help with the cleanup event. So that was a great way for us to continue engagement with the Guadalupe community following our air purifier program. We also, on April 29th and 30th, we had a booth at the Santa Barbara Earth Day event. We had a booth alongside of Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition in the Green Car Show. It was very well attended and great way for us to get information out not only on zero-emission vehicle technologies, but all the other programs that we administer and how folks can get air quality information available for their neighboring community. And this week on Sunday, we're going to be up in Buellton at the Open Streets. So we're back in business. It's been nice with COVID, and we're on the COVID comeback now. It's just been nice to be able to actually be present in the community and talk to everyone that we serve. The next item is the California legislative front. I wanted to give you a heads up. We're watching the budget discussions as they continue. We saw the governor's May revise, and through CAPCO, we've been very active in highlighting top priorities that are important to all of the 35 air districts, and we were fortunate that most of those priorities have been included in the governor's budget. There's one significant grant program that still is not being addressed, and that's the Farmer Incentive Program, where we provide grant funds to ag equipment throughout the county. It's very important not only for us, but for other regions of the state. And I know San Joaquin Valley definitely is leading the efforts to extend that program. But with the significant shortfall, I know all funding is going to be very tight. The last item under the legislative front I wanted to mention, and you'll hear a little bit more about this in the presentation later, but this morning, AB 953, our vessel speed reduction proposal to go statewide with Greg Hart's co-sponsorship has moved forward. It's off of the appropriation floor, appropriation suspense, going to the floor. The author is pushing to have it heard as early as Monday, if possible. So, and the last item I wanted to bring to your attention is our Landscape Equipment Electrification Fund program. We call it the LEAF program, thankfully. This provides incentives and vouchers to eligible organizations to trade in their gas or diesel-powered landscape equipment for electric landscape equipment. Previously, we ran 2 cycles of the LEAF program on a pilot project basis, and we were able to incentivize the purchase of over 700 pieces of equipment using $200,000 for funds. As you know, gas-powered and diesel-powered landscape equipment is highly polluting and contributes to regional and neighborhood air quality impacts. Operating a best-selling commercial gas-powered leaf blower for 1 hour emits as much smog-forming pollution as driving a passenger car over 1,000 miles, approximately the distance of Carpinteria all the way up to Seattle. So it makes a difference. So the more we can do to incentivize the purchase of electric, the better off we all will be. We're going to launch our 3rd cycle using $850,000 from the state's Carl Moyer Reserve Fund. Eligible organizations include commercial landscape businesses, nonprofit organizations that serve the county, as well as public agencies, public schools, and non-landscaping businesses that perform their own landscaping maintenance if they are located here in the county. Eligible organizations can receive up to $700 for chainsaws, trimmers, edgers, bush cutters, $1,400 for leaf blowers and vacuums, $1,500 for walk-behind lawnmowers, $15,000 for ride-on and stand-up sit mowers. So it's following the Carl Moyer guidelines for landscape equipment, and the one thing that's different with this program using this pot of money is when you participate in the program, your old gasoline or diesel piece of equipment will have to be scrapped. So that's one of the main changes. We'll start this program in June, and it's a first-come, first-served basis. We anticipate it taking a while to get all of the funds out, but we want to start with the beginning of summer. We're going to have outreach events. Our first one is scheduled for July 19th. This is going to be the Electric Landscape Equipment Demo Day, and it will be at San Marcos High School in Santa Barbara. We're going to have equipment from 8 different manufacturers where individuals can come and test drive this electric equipment. And there will also be American Green Zone Alliance to learn more about how you can change over your existing quiver of landscape equipment to clean technologies using incentive funds. We're also working on a second demo day up in North County. That one will probably take place in early fall. And that's it for my director's report.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that report. All right, do we have any public comment on the director's report?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the director's report.
Okay, thank you for that. And we will now move on to item F, public comment period. Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Ms. Clerk, have we received any requests?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any additional comments on items not on the agenda.
Excellent. Next item is discussion item G1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Certainly. Discussion item G1, fiscal year 2023-24 proposed budget. Consider the fiscal year 2023-24 proposed budget as follows. 1, receive the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023-24. 2, hold a public hearing to accept comments and provide direction to staff regarding changes desired by the board. And 3, schedule a budget adoption hearing for June 15, 2023.
All right, good afternoon. Today is the first of 2 public hearings on the Air District's proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. The district used the draft budget issued the draft budget on March 31st for public review and comment. It had also posted on our website, and we sent notification to local newspaper and sent notification also to the 749 permit holders throughout the region. On April 18th, we held a public workshop via Zoom to provide an overview of our budget, answer questions, and receive input. To date, no public comment has been received. For today's presentation, Tina Aguilar and I will be presenting on the district budget. We have 10 slides total, and the presentation should take us approximately 15 minutes to walk through. Following our presentation, we will answer any questions or comments from the board or members of the public. All right, before I go into the nuts and bolts of the proposed budget, I'd like to pause and provide some focus on the accomplishments that we've been able to accomplish within this fiscal year to date. First, the first item there relates to our Santa Maria station. It's a new station that we have located. As you might recall, CARB originally managed the monitoring station in Santa Maria. They elected to close that. We took the reins of that station and needed to relocate it because its original location did not meet EPA requirements. So that's been a significant project for us. It's a SLAM station, and it also serves for the refinery monitoring piece of legislation that requires us to have a community monitor downwind from the California asphalt production plant. And the two top photos there give you an image of the refinery-specific monitoring equipment that are at that station. So if you look at this station compared to all of our others, it has the most equipment in it. So it was a significant effort for us to get it up and running, and we're proud it's in place now in anticipation of the refinery ever coming back online. Our clean air room, I mentioned that earlier in Guadalupe. We provided 800 free air purifiers to individuals who live in Guadalupe and Casmelia. We were able to wrap up that pilot program. We had a significant number of individuals that were on our waiting list, and we worked with the food bank there, and were able to provide the remaining air purifiers to the community. It was very well received. We've done surveys of the individuals that were able to participate in that program, and also conducted extensive bilingual education on wildfire and public health impacts associated with the smoke. Our bilingual team has continued to grow. We now have 7 staff members who are certified to speak Spanish at our office. That makes up 17.5% of our staff. It's important for us in all of our communications, obviously with our news releases, section on our website, any communication such as a public notice, but also responding to calls and site visits. It's important that we also have those resources so we don't have to rely on a third-party consultant solely. Our performance numbers remain strong. I've included here our permit actions, inspections, and complaints that we've responded to in calendar year 2022. I also added here Public Records Act requests. I think it's notable. Those are those requests that come in that we have a very limited amount of time. We have to turn it around. 121 total requests came in this year, which required us to provide over 11,000 pages of documentation. So it's a lot of work and a lot of quick turnaround that is on our plate. As far as grants, we had a very big year last year. $4.5 million in clean air grants were contracted. That was up from an average of 3 years of $3.3 million. So that's just a lot of work, working with individual project proponents, changing out their old dirty diesel into a clean technology. We were able to disperse $1.7 million in funding. That's 32 grant projects that actually became operational in fiscal year 22-23. All right, moving now into our proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. Every year, early in the calendar year in January, we start with the budget process, programming our revenues. After those are forecasted, we look at expenditures, including salaries and benefits, and we make sure that all of that, including our services and supplies, equal our revenue. We want to make this a balanced budget. For this year's proposed budget, we continue to make conservative estimates for our revenue sources, such as permits and registration fees, and we also reduced our services and supplies to live within our means. The total budget for this fiscal year is $19.6 million, an increase of 10%. This is primarily the result of additional grant funding, pass-through grant funding, and fixed assets. Our total budget, out of the total budget, nearly half, 9.3 million, is earmarked for pass-through grant funds. These are funds provided by the state that we administer by voluntary local emission reduction projects, such as the Carl Moyer program, low emission school bus program, or the farmer program. We work with project proponents to change out old dirty diesel engines with cleaner technologies. Other than a percentage for administrative funds that we receive to manage those grant projects, the pass-through funds are outside of our purview to utilize for district operations. To best illustrate the budget that falls within the district's purview to allocate for our operations, we remove the pass-through funds for a total of 10.2 million for our operating expenditures. Staffing numbers are budgeted this year at 34 full-time equivalents. This is consistent with our current fiscal year. By keeping staffing numbers at this level, the district is prepared to operate in an era of changing revenue and associated workload. My goal continues to be to build a balanced budget that avoids the use of strategic reserves. On this slide, it lists key factors that affect the total budget for proposed fiscal year 23-24 of 19 million. Grant funds, as I mentioned earlier, are approximately 50% of our total budget. Of the total grant funds in this year's budget, approximately 1/3 of the funds are from new awards coming from the state. And 2/3 are from prior years that have been allocated for projects, but they have not yet come to fruition. So we've awarded the monies, we have a contract in place, but they haven't been able to get the equipment, get it on site, and do the final inspection. So those we have to carry forward from prior years. We receive approximately $37,000 to administer the grant funds and projects and the contracts. It might sound like a lot, but we keep track of all of our time associated, and that is still below the amount of time it takes us to manage the grant programs. Fee revenue, as part of our district rule 210, our fee rule, annually the district updates our fee schedule to include an annual adjustment for a consumer price index. The CPI for fiscal year 23-24 is 7.7%. There is one large one-time expenditure included in the budget, and it's a remodel of our North County office building that the district purchased in September of 2021. When complete, this space will house the district's North County staff, our fleet, conference space to hold public workshops, and it will offer a fully equipped monitoring lab. The innovation includes resiliency for the district's IT and air monitoring networks, as well as sustainable building practices, with the goal of being a net zero energy efficiency building. I'll now turn it over so that Tina can go get into the numbers.
Okay, good afternoon. The district's total budget is proposed to increase 10% from the prior year. I'd like to focus on our operating budget first, as this falls under the district's scope. The district's operating revenue increased by $200,000, or about 2% when looking at the big picture. This increase is mainly due to the 3-year permit reevaluation cycle. Historically, the cyclical nature of reevaluation fees has been a 3-year cycle: a high, a mid-high, and a low budget year. The high year and low year fluctuates plus or minus approximately $500,000 or so. Next fiscal year will be the high year of that cycle. Something I want to note here is the district's operating revenue had a decent decrease this year in air quality planning fees, annual emission fees, and air monitoring fees due to less oil and gas activity continuing to materialize in our county. That decrease was approximately $250,000 for next fiscal year. We have been anticipating this due to recent plug and abandonment work taking place. Back in fiscal year 17-18, we proactively started planning for it. This is the second consecutive year where the district has had to make adjustments accordingly. With that being said, the proposed CPI increase of 7.7% to permit fees has helped to offset that decrease. Use of operating fund balance is decreasing by 10% from the prior year, or $250,000. Last year, the district had budgeted to use a portion of fund balance to renovate the North County office building it purchased in 2021. With the anticipation of building renovations, $1.6 million was allocated in the current fiscal year 22-23 budget. However, only approximately $225,000 has been spent for building design and demolition. The leftover reno budget of $1.375 million is being rolled over into this budget, along with another $625,000 to fully renovate the space. Fund balance reserves are being proposed for this project instead of financing, with the idea that in future years, the district will replenish the monies to levels appropriate for the district's size. Lastly, some fund balance is scheduled for use for replacement of air monitoring equipment in our planning division. I want to note the district has a healthy fund balance projected to be approximately $3.6 million, and of that, $1.5 million is set aside by the board as strategic reserve to be used if there ever was a fiscal emergency. This chart breaks down the district's operating revenue by category. I think it's important to point out that the district does not receive any tax dollars. The blue piece of this pie chart includes majority of the district's fees and continues to be the largest chunk of the district's revenue at 38%, followed by federal, state, and other government revenue at approximately 28%. This includes things like grants the district receives from EPA for the Clean Air Grant or PM 2.5 air monitoring. Page 17 of the budget document has a full list of what revenue streams are captured in each category. Grants and incentive funds make up approximately 47% or $9.3 million of the district's total budget. You heard that right, $9.3 million. We thought last fiscal year was the largest grant year ever for the district at 7.4. However, this next fiscal year is by far going to be the largest total amount of grant funds ever, with an increase of 25%. All of the grant programs you see on this slide are considered pass-through funds. It should be noted, the way the district refers to pass-through may not be what folks are used to hearing in the traditional sense, in that we receive the funds and then allocate the money to grantees while keeping a predetermined stated percentage for admin costs to run these programs. The overall grant revenue, when compared to the prior year, is increasing by about $1.8 million. The district is projecting to receive $327,000 in admin funds to run these programs. That covers salaries for this grant cycle, as well as a portion of salaries for the next fiscal year. I will say the admin money we receive to run these programs is great. However, like Aaron just mentioned, these grant allocations are not permanent, and therefore we can't rely on these monies every year to cover salaries for staff that administer the grants. $6.5 million is included in the fund balance uses due to the timing of the grant allocation process. It's common for residual funds to be carried into the next year's budget if some of the clean air projects aren't completed and paid out in the current fiscal year. To put this into context, during our last grant cycle, which was in August, we received 95 applications. Out of those 95 applications, we were able to award 62 of them with grant funds for their proposed projects. Of the 62 awarded contracts, only approximately 22 of them will have met all the requirements of the grant and will receive the grant monies by our fiscal year end, which is June 30th. Therefore, the remainder 40 grantees will be rolled over into next fiscal year and receive their grant monies sometime in the future. In total, the district has 56 grants awarded that will be carried forward and paid with the fund balance amount noted on this slide. Now to operating expenditures. The district's largest expenditure is our staff. Salaries and benefits make up 63% of the total operating budget. Salaries and benefits increased approximately 6% from the prior year, mainly due to cost of living adjustments that were negotiated, as well as an increase to employer retirement contributions. The district saw an increase of $102,000 or 6.3% in the retirement contributions line item for next year. While on this subject, I wanted to point out that of the $6.4 million salary and benefit expense, approximately $1.7 million, or almost 27%, can be attributed to retirement contributions. As I had mentioned a few slides ago, because of the decrease in revenue due to less oil and gas activity, the district had to tighten our belts and cut approximately 10% in services and supplies to maintain a balanced budget. Administrative overhead costs are captured here. Total overhead S&S costs to support the district represents approximately 78.5% of the total S&S budget and includes things like utilities, rent, IT support, building maintenance costs, legal counsel fees, the county's cost allocation fee, just to name a few. The district is seeing an uptick in expenditure costs for fleet maintenance, fuel, and utility expenditures. As previously discussed, fixed assets remain at an increased level due to the remodel of the North County office building. However, once the remodel is complete, this category will make up a smaller piece of the pie. The monitoring section continues to replace analyzers and air monitoring equipment for all sites as needed to stay up to date and use the best technology available. Based on the current budget before you today, revenues are projected to meet expenditures. Therefore, there are no additional funds left over to be deposited into fund balance. So here's the district's operating expenditures by program. This does not include any grant pass-through funds except the administrative funds that are used for salaries to run the grants. As you can see, the district's efforts or workload is dispersed pretty evenly between our programs. Permitting and toxics and compliance and enforcement are on average around 20% of the district's total expenditures every year. That's followed by air monitoring and air quality planning at around 15% of total expenditures. The operations piece of this chart represents equipment maintenance costs, training, travel, and other costs associated with running these programs. So with that, I'll pass the baton back over to Erin so she can discuss the district's goals for next fiscal year.
All right, one last slide. In addition to working on and implementing all of our core responsibilities, the items identified on this slide highlight some key goals and objectives we have identified for the upcoming year. For the past 12 months or so, the district's management team has been taking a deep dive into our long-range fiscal strategy to proactively prepare the agency for changing revenue streams and associated workload. This effort continues to build off of the 2018 reorganization that your board approved and has since been successfully implemented. In addition to our in-house evaluation, we have also been working with an outside consultant to gain a better understanding of cost recovery component in the fees we collect and quantifying the workload that is associated with implementation of our permit program. In fiscal year 23-24, we will bring the second phase of our long-range fiscal strategy, or proposed cost recovery policy, and modifications to our fee rule, Rule 210, for your board's consideration. Another key goal for this coming year is our online permitted facilities map, which is an extremely important tool for staff and the public that we serve. In the next fiscal year, we'll implement changes to this tool to enhance its usability and expand the information that is available on this section of our website. The Community Air Protection Program continues to be a top priority for us. We will have additional grant funds that will be eligible for the low-income regions of the county. We'll also be expanding our community engagement, as well as we have 2 remaining BARCed measures, that's Best Available Retrofit Control Technology measures, and enhanced criteria toxic reporting requirements for local sources. Reaching the attainment status for both ozone and PM continue to be a top priority. And what I've highlighted here is particulate matter. We continue to have exceedances of PM10 up in North County and some in Santa Barbara as well. So getting a handle on the sources of those and different types of measures that can be implemented to reduce those number of exceedances is important to us, as well as a new requirement from US EPA for a PM10 mitigation plan that deals with wildfire smoke. That will be coming to your board later in January, actually. And lastly, completing the remodel of our McCoy office building with the goal of moving in next fiscal year. That concludes our presentation, and both Tina and I are available for any questions or comments.
Thank you to the staff. Do we have any discussions from the board on the budget?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Lavanino.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, and really appreciate it. Excellent presentation. The question, and it's not in the presentation, but it was in the budget on page 17 and 18. So in the revenue plan, the part I don't understand is the, so for the actuals in, I want to know what that decrease in fund balance, the 5 million, does that have to do with McCoy? And it's really hard to point to if we're not all looking at it, but I don't know if Tina has that. So it's the district budget under the revenue plan. It shows that our revenue plan total for actual 21-22 is 11.2 million, and in 2022 it was 17.8 million. And now we're going back to 13.6 million. So I was trying to figure out, and above that is the decrease in fund balance of 5 million. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how that all goes together.
Yeah, you're correct. Part of it is McCoy, where the current year we have 1.6 million allocated. Proposed for next year is 2 million. And then also included that in that is the use of the grant fund balance, which this year is
Okay.
6.5 million. So that's why that is such
it.
a high number. But we do anticipate that to come down after obviously we use the funds for the remodel. And then depending on how grants continue in the future, if they are lower, then that fund balance would also come down.
Okay, and then on the Air Resources Board grant programs, we saw a significant increase as you talked about, but we are projecting that that's going to go back down to historical levels in 23-24.
It won't necessarily go to historic levels. It will still be elevated, and it really is dependent on the legislature and where they land with Farmer. Farmer's the one grant program that we've been able to secure close to $1 million, I believe, each fiscal year for the past few. And currently, there are no additional Farmer funds in the proposed budget.
Okay, and then my last question is just on PRAs. That seems like an inordinate amount of requests, but and documents that you guys are chasing. What's driving that? Where are those questions coming from? What are they looking at?
It's all over the map. Luckily, we do have our permitting facilities map that's really been able to direct a lot of PRAs that direction, where they can go and actually download permits and cite specific information on all the sources that are under permit with the district. But we have a large array of PRAs that come in, and as you know, you just can't deny a Public Records
Right.
Act request. So we have a good team that's working on it, but it definitely takes a lot of our staff's time to pull it all together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Lavanino. Any other questions from, let me just check in with Santa Maria first. I'll just note that AI can probably help with those requests pretty soon. Something to think about.
Yeah, we're very excited and interested on AI, but we actually just got an email from our IT this week of, yes, we're excited, but hold off, staff.
Yeah, got it.
Well, I think some of those PRAs are probably generated by AI, so
That's
that's
true.
also on the other end.
Good point. Any other questions about the presentation from directors here in Santa Barbara? Director Prodi.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Well, I think I ask this question every time we review the budget and about our reserve policy. Do we have a reserve policy as far as, how much we always want to maintain in that reserve, and then if needed and used, the replacement of that funding?
So Director Prodi, we don't have a written policy per se. We do have what we believe to be, or in industry, 15 to 20% of operating budget. We try to stay above that. I think with where we're at now, we're almost at 50% of operating budget, and that's if these, the fund balances for grants get paid out, and all those things. So we don't have a written policy, but we can put one together, and look into that if that's something the board would like.
Don't we have a strategic reserve policy for,
Yes.
that
so
the board
there's-
approved a while back?
Correct. So there is 1.5 million that Aaron and I both referenced today, and that was based on board recommendation. So there is a separate line item within our fund balances for 1.5 million that is not touched, and that was based on board direction.
And that would also enable us to know what we'd be able to use that money for, what would constitute pulling that money.
Yeah,
and
we could
using
go
it.
back to that meeting to get the all the details.
Oh, okay.
But yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I had one question just on your accomplishments. One that stood out for me was just, was the pilot project for 800 purifiers. I just love how tangible that is, how it helps health and well-being and as well as air quality. What's next step in that pilot project? Or is there a next step?
Our goal with that pilot project is really to build off of its success. We've gotten significant recognition on the pilot project that we were able to implement, where actually other legislators at the state and the federal level are talking about expanding on that and providing funding to make it possible. That's our biggest challenge with that project, is coming up with the dollar amount to expand that type of pilot project elsewhere in the community. We selected Guadalupe specifically because with CalEnviroscreen, it's identified as a disadvantaged community.
Sure.
And a lot of the individuals who live there and work in that area unfortunately have to be outside during wildfires, smoke impacts, and wanting to provide a clean environment once they get out of the field.
Excellent. I fully support that. Okay, well, it looks as though we can move on. Let's see, we need to have a vote, though, to receive this report.
Chair
Is that-
Caps, we do have to call for public comment.
Oh, thank you for that. A reminder, any public comment?
I do see we have a few attendees on Zoom, so just a reminder to please click the button to raise your hand at the bottom of your screen if you would like to provide a public comment on this item. Seeing no raised hands, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay, I need a motion and a second then to receive this report. Or this is more than receive, it's actually supporting the budget, is that correct?
It's all the actions to receive the proposed budget, to hold a public hearing, and to schedule a budget adoption.
Thank you for that. Any motions?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Hartman.
I'll second that, King.
Thank you, Director King. We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
Director Julian,
Aye.
Director Cordova,
Aye.
Director Orona,
Aye.
Director Williams,
Aye.
Director Hartman,
Aye.
Director Nelson,
Aye.
Director Lavanino,
Aye.
Director King,
Aye.
Director Parodi,
Aye.
Director Rouse,
Aye.
and Chair Caps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks to all. The next item for discussion is G2. Will the clerk please read that into the record?
Certainly. Discussion item G2, update on vessel speed reduction program and ocean-going vessels. Receive and file an update on the 2022 vessel speed reduction program and other activities related to large ocean-going vessels.
All right, we have a tag team today to provide a presentation on VSR and ocean-going vessels. To start off with, Alex Economou, our planning manager, will be starting off the presentation, and Liz Bantalon, our PIO, will join him in the middle.
Thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, Chair Caps, members of the board. As Aaron mentioned, I'm Alex Economou, and this is Liz Bantalon. And we're here today to provide an update on the district's vessel speed reduction program and other updates on other ocean-going vessel activities. So every year, we see thousands of vessel transits through the Santa Barbara Channel region, as these ocean-going vessels travel to and from the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Port Hueneme. With over 100 miles of coastline in Santa Barbara County, the emissions from these ships can blow onshore and impact our local communities. Ocean-going vessels currently account for about 42% of the county's ozone precursor emissions countywide. While these ships are outside of the district's regulatory control, district staff have been actively tracking marine shipping emissions and advocating for additional federal and international regulations since 1994. In our most recent 2022 ozone plan, we included an updated emission inventory and growth projections for the marine shipping sector. And the forecast shows that marine shipping emissions will continue to grow until calendar year 2035. Federal and international regulations currently require that newly built ships use emission controls on their engines, but it will take another 10 to 15 years to phase out the existing older ships and their dirtier engines. So without the ability to directly regulate these vessels, the district has turned to a voluntary vessel speed reduction program called the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program, which was created as a partnership for cleaner air, safer whales, and quieter oceans. And it's a partnership of the air districts in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Bay Area, as well as national marine sanctuaries, nonprofits, and foundations. The program is seasonal and active between the months of May and December, which are the months that we typically measure high levels of ozone and when whales are present off the California coast. In the program, shipping companies are asked to voluntarily slow their ships down to 10 knots or less, which reduces air pollution emissions as well as the risk of fatal ship strikes on whales and reduces ocean noise. The program began as a small-scale pilot in 2014 and has grown year after year ever since. The program originally focused on just container ships and auto carriers since they have the highest emissions, but over the last couple of years, the partnership has invited bulk, general cargo, and tanker companies to participate as well, since those vessels still achieve air quality and whale protection benefits when they slow down. 23 different companies participated in the program last year, operating 684 different vessels that slowed down for 268,000 nautical miles, reducing NOx emissions by 921 tons. Last year was the highest performing season to date, and the program has seen improved cooperation rates over the last 5 years. As you can see from the table, back in 2018, only 36% of the vessel traffic from the participating companies slowed down to 10 knots or less. And last year, cooperation level increased all the way up to 78% because these vessels and shipping companies are changing their operating schedules and factoring in the time requirements to slow down. We're able to evaluate the cooperation levels of the companies using their onboard tracking systems, and we measure cooperation from the companies based on the percentage of fleet distance that they travel that's 10 knots or less. And as you can see on the right, there are 3 levels of recognition awards. In 2022, 8 companies achieved the highest cooperation level and received the Sapphire Award, while 10 companies achieved gold and 5 achieved blue sky. Last year, the program had just over $200,000 budgeted for monetary incentives, and the financial awards ranged from $2,500 to $20,000 for the gold and sapphire companies based on the size of their fleets. However, over 75% of the financial awards were declined by participating companies last year, and those funds are being rolled over to the 2023 VSR season to be used on recognition efforts. Pictured on the bottom left of the slide is the award that the Sapphire awardees receive that demonstrates their commitment to slowing down. And pictured on the bottom right is a news story about a school in the Bay Area where the children wrote thank you cards to the companies for slowing down. And the positive recognition and media attention from the news story even led to one of the shipping companies declining their financial award. And now I'll pass things off to Liz to talk more about program marketing.
Thank you, Alex, and board members. I'm Liz Bantalon, the district's public information officer. This program is very much a partnership program, and our agency plays a key role with the marketing and outreach efforts that I'm going to share with you today. But I just want to give a special shout out to the West Coast Media Coordinator for NOAA and a program associate for the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation. These efforts are largely led by them. So how does this partnership share information about the program with the public and the media to ensure that the shipping companies get broad recognition? We have heard time and time again from them that recognition is very important. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox for this: news releases, ads, sponsored features, and social media, including now with the new program Instagram account at Blue Whales Blue Skies, shown on this slide, so follow them if you would like to. We use these tools with a variety of media sectors: shipping industry news, business news, environmental news, supply chain news, and of course our local media partners. We strive to spread out the use of these tools throughout the year to ensure frequent opportunities for public attention and media coverage. All of the messaging that we do focuses on the key elements of the program: protecting whales and protecting air quality. The graphic on this slide here shows the reach of our efforts with last year's marketing campaign. This marketing approach serves two key goals. One, recognizing the shipping companies, and that exposure encourages other companies to join the program. And two, recognizing our new brand ambassadors, which I'm going to share more about on the next slide, and recruiting new businesses to join that effort. And as a major added benefit, the shipping companies have shown us just how much all of this marketing means to them. They value it so much that they decline their financial awards. Next slide, please. Last year, the program launched this new component called the Brand Ambassadors, with the goal to increase demand by businesses for more sustainable shipping. A brand ambassador for our program can be any business that ships with at least one of the participating shipping companies. Program results are shared with these brand ambassadors, and the ambassadors in turn share that information through their own channels, helping us spread awareness and hopefully show shipping lines why they should join the program. The image on this slide shows an ad in the Pacific Coast Business Times newsletter, encouraging businesses to become one of those brand ambassadors. The Brand Ambassador program currently has 7 brand ambassadors, and we're always hoping to have more. So if your board knows of any business that might be interested, please let us know. Next slide. And now we're going to share a brief video put together by the program about the brand ambassadors and how that helps us communicate the benefits to the public and the media. And after the video plays, I'm going to turn it back to Alex.
I'm trying to make a difference with my purchases wherever I can these days. I love shopping online, but it turns out some of the products I love are shipped here from far away. That impacts the ocean and climate because container ships burn fossil fuels that emit greenhouse gases. Pollution along the coast can cause asthma for kids like mine, and sometimes these fast-moving ships accidentally hit and kill endangered species, like humpback and blue whales. But there is a great program that works with my favorite brands and the shipping companies they use to protect whales and reduce pollution along the coast. It's called the Blue Whales Blue Skies program, and more companies are getting on board. Partners in the program ship their goods with ocean carriers that slow to 10 knots when traveling close to the coast, reducing air pollution and protecting endangered whales.
To make a difference for whales and people, visit bluewhalesblueskies.org.
I always love watching those videos. The music gets me excited. Thanks, Liz. So a couple of slides ago, I talked about the results from the 2022 Blue Whales and Blue Skies program. The 2023 program just launched a couple of weeks ago on May 1st, and one of the big differences this year is the newly formed Monterey Bay VSR zone. This expansion covers about 80 more nautical miles along the California Central Coast, as shown on the map on the left. Another change for the 2023 season is that the Santa Barbara Channel shipping lanes were expanded westward by about 10 nautical miles to keep the vessels in the designated shipping lanes and away from marine wildlife. Lastly, we're excited to have the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, as well as the SLO County and Monterey Bay Air Districts join the partnership. Related to the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program, we wanted to update the board on AB 953, which was introduced in February 2023 by Assembly members Greg Hart and Damon Connolly. This bill would task the Ocean Protection Council, in coordination with coastal air districts, national marine sanctuaries, the EPA, U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, CARB, and other stakeholders, to create a statewide voluntary vessel speed reduction and sustainable shipping program for the entire California coast. The bill would build upon the existing Blue Whales and Blue Skies program, and if approved, would provide additional support for expanding the emission reduction efforts. The bill was double referred to the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee and the Assembly Natural Resources Committee, and passed through both committees unanimously. And as Aaron mentioned earlier, the bill passed through Assembly appropriations this morning and is moving on to the Assembly floor. On the picture on the right is a picture of Aaron providing public testimony at the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee earlier this spring. Switching gears a little bit, cruise ships are another category of vessels that also contribute to nearshore emissions. After a brief pause during the pandemic, cruise ships returned to the city of Santa Barbara in 2022. These ships anchor about 1 mile offshore and can accommodate anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 passengers. During their 10-hour stay, these ships run their engines to provide power for the ship, while many of the passengers come ashore on smaller tender boats. With the program restarted after the pandemic, the Harbor Commission formed a subcommittee in April 2022 to share information and collect public comment on the visiting cruises. District staff were requested to present on the air quality impacts of these cruise ships at the subcommittee's December 2022 meeting. And at that meeting, staff provided information about the types of air pollutants emitted by cruise ships and estimates of the pollution associated with a typical cruise visiting Santa Barbara. Emissions were further put into perspective by comparing them to the emissions from passenger vehicles and seeing how cruise ships fit into the county's overall emission inventory. District staff will continue to evaluate air quality impacts and to be a resource for the Harbor Commission when requested to provide relevant information on cruise ships. Lastly, I wanted to mention some of the efforts statewide to explore additional emission control techniques for ocean-going vessels. Last December, CARB published a report on their 2020 control measure for ocean-going vessels at berth, which will require shoreside power for vessels when they're docked at berth. These requirements are phased in based on the vessel type and will be implemented over the next few years. The district reviewed CARB's analysis and submitted a comment letter providing support for CARB's efforts to explore additional emission reduction measures from ocean-going vessels. In the letter, the district recommended that CARB develop mitigation measures and fund pilot projects for at-anchor activities to offset emissions that impact nearby communities. CARB's board will meet to discuss the interim evaluation report at a future meeting, and the district will continue to work with CARB to achieve additional emission reductions from ocean-going vessels. And that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that your board may have. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any discussion or questions from the board?
I've got one from Santa Maria.
Please proceed.
Chair Capps, thank you.
Sure.
I'm just curious, are we tracking whale strikes at all? I mean, see how effective this is? I'm sure we're tracking it. It would be nice to have it in the report too. I mean, obviously the GHG reduction is awesome, but I think the hook on the whales is where we're getting all the community involvement. So it'd be nice to know if we're being effective or not.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I might ask if Jessica Morton is on the call from NOAA, if she'd like to address that question.
I do see her on here. I'm allowing her to speak, so Jessica, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Can you speak into the mic, Jessica? You're coming in a little faint.
Sure, I can come in closer. How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
So I represent NOAA's Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary on the Protecting Blue Whales, Blue Skies program. I also work for the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation. And to answer your question regarding recorded ship strikes, we do track that. That's something that NOAA, at large, not just Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, but also NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service ARM tracks strandings of whales that wash up on the beaches in California. One thing that's incredibly difficult about tracking this issue is that we know that a large percentage of the whales that are getting hit and killed by large vessels offshore are actually not making their way to the coastline. We know that a large percentage of these whales are actually sinking. So we are tracking what we see, and we end up seeing around between 3 and 4 endangered whales per year that are hit and killed in California. But as I noted, that's a small percentage of what we think is actually happening. And so a large focus for us at NOAA has been to work with research groups to actually model what we think the total occurrence of ship strikes is, not just in California, but along the US West Coast. And their estimations come in closer to 80 endangered whales per year that are hit and killed. So we are tracking that information, but unfortunately, the records that we have aren't necessarily indicative of the true scale of the problem.
Thank you. I'm just curious if the shipping companies are required, I know you could just say we didn't know, but are they required if they know if they make a strike, even if the body doesn't wash up, are they required to report strikes?
They are directed to report incidents involving marine mammals to the Coast Guard and to NOAA, yes. I will say though, for most of the cases that we have observed, we actually end up knowing about ship strikes most often when they are coming into the ports with whales on the bows of the ships. It turns out that because these ships are so massive, they're sometimes 10 times the size of a blue whale, if you can believe that. And they really don't know. It seems like most of the crew is completely unaware of the fact that they've hit blue whales or any large whales when they actually occur. So whenever they can actually confirm that there was a ship strike event, they are directed to notify the Coast Guard and NOAA, but in most cases, they are not aware of it.
No, or I'm sorry, Jessica, this is Erin with the Air District. I was curious, as far as the tracking of information that you have available, have you been able to see a noticeable benefit from the slowdown of VSR during the migration time?
Yeah, so I'm grateful that the stranding question was asked first, because I think it helps explain my answer to this question. But we do work with modelers to try to estimate what we think the reduction in risk is associated with the slowdowns that we've seen over the years in California. And I can confirm, yes, that the research and the modeling is saying that we are achieving significant reductions in risk. It varies from each region. So we have slightly more reduction in risk estimated in the San Francisco region, where vessel speeds are generally much higher than what we see in Southern California. But unfortunately, I can also confirm we're not at this point hitting reductions in risk that allow sanctuaries to meet our conservation goals. So we have still some progress to be made and some risk to be reduced. But we have worked with modeling groups to actually estimate what we think the reduction in risk is. But again, sometimes I know our air pollution control district colleagues know this. We sometimes get jealous of the fact that the estimations on the air emission reduction side are a little less tenuous and a lot more clear than what we can estimate on the whale risk reduction side. But we do have some numbers and some researchers working with us on that.
Thank you. I believe Director Williams.
I just want to thank you for the participation in both the bill and the project. I think there's clear benefits both to whales and to people being able to breathe cleaner air, especially as it's been a growing problem.
Thank you. Director Hartman.
Just a quick observation. We probably will be expecting a lot more shipping as the Morro Bay Wind Project unfolds, either from the Port of Oakland or more likely from the Port of LA Long Beach. So I just wonder how this, if we're reaching out early to let them know. I assume now they're doing the environmental impact review, and the modeling that was described will be applied to this and mitigation measures. But probably doesn't hurt to reach out early.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, it was a conversation we had on our BCC meeting not too long ago when Alex was able to give a VSR presentation. Dawn from San Luis Obispo County has experience with these wind projects, and she was concerned, does this mean that we will have to slow the speed to get those vessels in because time is of an essence? So this is a voluntary program, and we definitely like to make that aware of all participating shipping companies and then the end users of that. But I don't know the total number of vessels that we reach every year with our outreach when we launch the program, but it's pretty significant where we're reaching, I believe, nearly all of the companies that traverse the coast of California. It's just on their business model, whether they elect or not to participate.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Director Prodi?
I just have a comment that, I just think this is such an impressive program, especially when you have so many that have declined, the incentives and turn that back over. It's very, very, it's really quite phenomenal that that's happening. I'm just hoping that maybe the city of Goleta can help with the outreach in some way, and if you might possibly consider sending some information to Kelly Hoover, who's really good at getting information out for our city. If we can help in any way, we'd like to.
Thank you, Director Prodi. Yes, Kelly is a great partner. I'll reach out to her.
Thank you.
Good, and now we have Director Rouse.
Yeah, just a quick comment and then a question. As somebody who's crossed the channel very frequently since the mid-'70s, I have noticed the reduction. I don't see ships doing 22 knots anymore. And I know because I have to triangulate when I cross the channel how fast they're coming. And anecdotally, it feels like I've seen more activity, especially with humpbacks and blues. I don't know so much about the grays, but it seems like so. Whatever they're doing, it seems like it's a more benign atmosphere out there, so it's appreciated. Regarding the cruise ships, since that's a Santa Barbara City thing, I have spent time on the ships and with both onshore and on the vessels themselves. And we spent a lot of time when they have an environmental director who's an officer on the ship who has a tremendous amount of documentation. I mean, if you're using Charmin or Kleenex, they know. And in terms of all the fuel mixtures and whatnot, I'm just kind of curious from staff, or I don't know if staff meets with the actual cruise ships themselves or the staff or with their environmental standards. I was pretty impressed with the amount of exhaustive tracking they do on things, and they have a lot of onshore responsibility since they visit both here in Monterey, which are both two sensitive marine areas. So I know that there's a subcommittee with the Harbor Commission, but I don't know that they've actually gone out. But I've done this with Heal the Ocean and whatnot, and I've been impressed with the amount of tracking they do and the future plans for different fuel mixes and whatnot. So I was kind of curious about whether staff has done that as well.
I know that we've worked a lot with the waterfront department. I think regarding your question about specifically if we've met with the cruise ship companies at all, I'd have to defer to Tim Mitro, who's up in North County, to see if he has any feedback on that question.
I would just, because I would recommend if you hadn't, because it really is a wealth of information that you may or may not get, especially from just the waterfront department, because they were on the same trip I was. So, but it's, I was relatively impressed with the kind of tracking they do. So they're obviously a controversial presence. So it's important that everybody gets it right. So thank you.
One thing we are trying to do, if funding is available, working through CARB, because they're the state regulates the emissions from ocean-going vessels, cruise ships in particular, and they've been focused a lot at berth emissions and trying to electrify at berth. But we're at anchor, so it's a little different situation for us, being a mile off of the coast.
Yeah, we don't really have that option, right?
Right,
So.
but there is pilot projects that I've heard about that could bring power out too. These large cruise ships, and I'm trying to
battery
make,
barge, all right.
Yeah, I'm trying to make the case for CARB to work with us and local stakeholders to, if there is funding or technology available, let's put it to test here and see if we can reduce the emissions even more. And obviously, working with the cruise ship operators would be critical for that.
Well, I know too that the industry, I'm amazed they still make money, but they are also worldwide looking at different models because they do go to very sensitive environments all over the planet. And they're new, as the new ships come on board, they're having the different, able to run on different kinds of fuels and whatnot and use a lot less of whatever they were doing before, so.
Yep. Good.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Any other comments or questions? I want to make sure I didn't skip over anybody in Santa Maria. I don't think so. Okay, well, this, I appreciate the report. This is just a file and receives. Oh, I'm sorry, clerk, is there any public comment, please?
Chair Capps, I do see a raised hand on Zoom by Jessica Morton.
Yeah, good afternoon again. I can keep this brief, but following that great presentation from Alex and Liz on the vessel speed reduction efforts, I just wanted to chime in with a quick comment in support of the Protecting Blue Whales, Blue Skies program and Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District's continued involvement in it. And just to emphasize again and clarify, I'm Jess Morton. I work with NOAA's Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and also the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, two of the partner groups on this program. And for 7 years now, I've had the privilege of working directly with your district staff, including Aaron and Alex and Liz and Tim Mitro. And together, I think we really have been able to expand the program's impact each year and achieve some really amazing results. And obviously, as Alex and Liz shared, that's both on the air quality and also the endangered whale protection side in California. And I didn't mention this when I answered those questions, but ship strikes really do continue to be one of the leading causes of mortality for endangered whales in California. And collaborating with the air districts on this specific program has been a really important component of NOAA's work to reduce ship strike risk in the region. There's not a ton of options for reducing risk when it comes to reducing ship strike risk. NOAA works at an international level and a federal level to actually relocate shipping lanes whenever it's possible to try to reduce the overlap and the risk of these ship strikes happening. But the vessel speed reduction component is really important when that inevitable overlap is going to happen, like it needs to happen in our region because whales are in very different places all across our region. And so thanks in large part to this program, I just wanted to emphasize that in Southern California, we have seen cooperation levels with these slow speed requests, and the government or the federal agencies put out the requests to all large vessel traffic. And we've seen that the cooperation levels with all large vessel traffic have increased from around 20% if we look back 5 or 6 years ago, and we're up to 60% of all of the large vessel traffic that's traveling through these areas going at 10 knots or less. And again, these are actions that come with really significant estimated reductions in risks to whales and also measured reductions in underwater noise associated with their transit. So anyway, just wanted to offer my support and really my thanks on behalf of NOAA's Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation to the Board of Directors for the Air Pollution Control District's continued involvement and also their leadership on this very collaborative air quality and whale conservation program. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morton, for your partnership and for participating today. So with that, again, this is just a receive and file item, so no vote is necessary. So I'll move us on to item H, which is announcements. The one I have listed here is just the fact that this will be rebroadcast on SBTV, Channel 20. And with that, we'll move to adjourn. And the next Santa Barbara County APCD board meeting is on June 15th. So we will see you all then.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.